Welcome again to the S.E.M podcast. Jack and Zach are here once again, and tonight we are joined by the famous Drew Allen. Drew, what part of the world you calling from today?
I'm calling from the faraway land of North Ogden, Utah.
Oh, that place is far away.
And kind of boring.
It was when I was a kid anyway. It was like the outer nether regions of the Valley of Salt Lake. All right. Well, Drew, you told us you've been listening to the podcast. Your name has been mentioned at least a half dozen times, if not more, over the last number of weeks. And so I'm sure there'll be many people who are looking forward to hearing your experience in Scotland. So let's start first talking about pre-mission, decision to serve, reaction going to Scotland. Then we'll go over, talk about life since coming home. Then we'll go back through the mission. So you're up, Drew.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Yeah, it's been fun. The last probably 5 or 6 podcasts have all been people that I served with or around and overlap. So that's been a good kind of prep to listen through some of those guys. First time caller, long time listener. Love the podcast. I never watched it on YouTube though. I probably need to go back so I can see some of the pictures and see it that way. I just end up listening to it on the podcasts, but love what you guys are doing. So yeah, a little bit about me before the mission call. I grew up in the church. Lived in Utah really my whole life, kind of that same 20-mile radius. I always wanted to go on a mission. I really wanted a spiritual experience though, to like know that I should go, right? It was kind of during the time when the bar was raised and there was really the encouragement to go and kind of the expectation that if you were worthy, like you went. And I was fine with that, but I remember really wanting like a spiritual answer, knowing if I should go or not. I never really got one. Which I think there's probably a lesson learned in that, but I remember like going to mission prep and to the temple and praying so hard and like wanting like a clear answer of like, yes, you could go hear some of these cool stories of people knowing that they were supposed to go. I never really had anything like that, but that's fine. I have one older sister and 3 younger sisters, none of which served missions, kind of the oldest of the grandchildren as well. So I really didn't have a whole lot of people around me that had gone on a mission. I just flat out didn't know what to expect. Like we were the typical, you had one set of missionaries that covered like 40 states or some like unbelievable number. So I never really saw missionaries. They were never really in our homes. I just didn't know what to expect, which I guess has some pros and cons. But I remember, and I took some notes here, so forgive me for reading this verbatim, but I remember Elder Russell and Ballard gave a talk back in 2002 at the priesthood session. So that was 5 years prior to my call. So it was a ways back, but it stuck out. So he said, we don't need spiritually weak and semi-committed young men. We don't need you to just fill a position. We need your whole heart and whole soul. We need vibrant, thinking, passionate missionaries who know how to listen to and respond to the whisperings of the Holy Spirit. This isn't a time for spiritual weaklings. We cannot send you on a mission to be reactivated, reformed, or to receive a testimony. We just don't have time for that. We need you to be filled with faith, hope, charity, and love with an eye single to the glory of God, and that is not all we expect of you, my young brethren. We expect you to have an understanding and a solid testimony of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. We expect you to work hard. I remember that sticking with me. I was like, that's pretty hardcore. I don't know if that would be received very well today if someone stood up in conference and laid it down like that. But that stuck with me, that it was that big of a deal. One thing I remember, like prepping for a mission, I think it was maybe Elder Fitzer that kind of touched on this. We don't do a great job prepping like for how much fun there is to have on a mission. We always hear that like it's going to be hard and foreign and like long grueling hours, but we never really talk about like the fun memories. And I think that's why this podcast has done so well, because like there's so much fun. You think back on it, and the fun definitely outweighs the weird or the bad or the terrible.
So it's true.
Thank goodness.
True. Yeah, which you hear some of the stories, and it's amazing that we still look back on it and respond to some of these crazy stories. So I didn't really have any idea of where I'd serve. My old man served in Alberta, Canada, so he's always just talked about how cold it was. They put like golf balls in their mittens to go knock on doors because it was so cold. So I didn't want to go there. I took Spanish through high school, so I thought maybe I'd go somewhere to South America. Scotland never really crossed my mind. I got my mission call the week of, it was over the 24th of July in 2007. My mom's side of the family, for Christmas present, they take all of the extended family up to Sun Valley, Idaho on vacation. So we were up there and kind of wondered that maybe the call would come while we were gone, and it did. So we had some neighbors overnighted up to us.
Oh, wow.
So that was fun. We were at the Olympic
That's
pool
cool.
in Sun Valley. Yeah, if you've ever been up to somewhere that have the big outdoor Olympic pool, and we were up there, and I don't know how many family members we had, probably like 50. Last year we had like 75 people there. It was fun. We had all of our extended family, and I actually opened my mission column on the side of the pool, like in my swimming suit.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
no one had a clue. Like everyone was cheering. You have all these people that are not members of the church. Like, who is this weird family? Yeah. I did pronounce it Edinburgh. Never heard of Edinburgh before. Kind of knew where it was on a map. Elder Lucas would be furious that I was this ignorant Yank that couldn't go point out like the United Kingdom and everything that's within that. But that was fun. We go to that same vacation every year in July, so that's always kind of a fun reminder.
Well, that is cool.
Another kind of cool thing about getting my call, I had a neighbor whose nephew received the same call to leave the same day. So his name is Jake Mulford. We kind of had like an awkward, kind of first date. My neighbor was like, yeah, our nephew got invited to the same mission, like leaving the same time. So he came over, we had like brownies and ice cream or something. And it was kind of awkward, but I think we had a big map folded out on the kitchen bar, and we were looking at it like, oh, what if we went to Loch Ness? And that was kind of fun. So we made a little connection there before we left.
I had that happen to me too with one of my missionaries from my mission or my MTC group. So he was in Farmington where one of my aunts and uncles lived, and they're like, oh, he's leaving the same day. And we went and like shook hands. It was like, nice to meet you. And then it was just the most awkward thing. So I know exactly what you went through there. Pretty funny.
Yeah, luckily Jake was really outgoing and made it not awkward, but I was really awkward. It was a bad first date, but that was fun. Kind of another cool connection. My grandparents at the time were serving a service mission at the conference center, and one of the missionaries there, I think he would take the Boy Scouts back to like the National Scout Jamboree in Scotland or something. So he was like, well, come down, I'll give you a tour of the conference center. So I showed up, and he's in like full on kilt and like a walking stick. And
Nice.
I feel bad, I don't even remember his name, but he did a really good job of getting me excited to be there. And yeah,
That's cool.
That's amazing.
So yeah, that kind of sums up the pre-mission. Post-mission life. I'll talk on this a little bit, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do for school. I didn't do any college before I left. I wasn't that mature or smart to go get any college done beforehand. So kind of my last area, decided to go to Utah State. Ended up rooming with actually Jake Mulford and another missionary, Tyson Bear. So that was really fun.
Nice.
I remember, I think it was just Jake and I don't know if Tyson was back or not yet, but we thought it would be a great idea to take like an accounting 2010 class at like 6:30 in the morning or something absurd. We were fresh off the mission, motivated, like ambition was high. That was not a wise life choice. I remember going to Frank the Tank Schumann. I think I had like a D- at the end of the semester, and just like pleading to him. I was like, I came to all your classes, and he went through the most like basic. Can you explain what a debit is and what a credit is and what's an asset and what's a liability? And somehow he gave me like a B.
Oh my gosh.
That was nothing short of a tender mercy, because not a smart choice doing that. So yeah, we lived up at Utah State for a while. It was kind of cool. We had a roommate that lived with us that actually ended up getting baptized. And it really wasn't like member work that we did. I think he reached out to missionaries on his own, and he was like, hey, I live with these 3 guys. Like, they're kind of weird, kind of quirky, but I think he saw something he liked. So that was kind of cool that he just kind of surprised us. Like, hey, will you come to my baptism in a week or something? And we were like,
oh, wow.
That is cool.
So that was pretty fun. About the same time I met my wife up at Utah State. Terribly gaggy, like student ward family home evening experience. I think we knew each other for like, I want to say it was like a week and a half to 2 weeks, and we actually called the temple and set our sealing date.
Nice.
I hadn't proposed to her at that point, because I guess it'd be weird to propose, but not weird to call the temple. Yeah, we didn't tell our families or anything. We we dated. We met in probably January or February, and we got married in August. So dating wasn't, it wasn't that fast, right, compared to some stories, but we had a date set pretty fast. So we got married in August of 2010. We lived in Cache Valley for a couple of years, and then we moved to North Ogden, where I'm still at now. My wife she's a registered nurse. She's always worked as a nurse, mostly just part-time. But for a while, she was my sugar mama. When I was going to school, she got her associates before I was done, so that was nice. She's worked at a few hospitals and ERs and likes doing that, so that's good. I think that's her sanity break.
Nice.
I ended up transferring to Weber State and got my degree in construction management. That's really what my whole career, even through high school, has been centered around is construction. It's been really been a good career. I was always told in high school, whatever you do, you don't want to be a construction worker, right? Like, you don't want to do that. Like, they're low paid and you have to work hard, and they're unskilled. But it's been a really enjoyable career for me. So most of my experience has been with heavy civil, building roads and highways and water lines and sewer. But recently, I've moved to doing utility solar scale farms. So, like, if you drive to Disneyland and see those like huge, 1,000 acres of solar panels. Yeah, that's what we're building now. So it's been a great career. I've been really blessed with that.
Are you doing that in Utah then?
Yeah,
all over the place.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I kind of get to focus just in Utah. So there's one just outside of Nephi that we just finished. There's one kind of by Cedar City. For the Lake Powell lovers, there'll be one there popping up here shortly. So right now we've been able to kind of stick in Utah, which is nice.
Interesting.
Cool. And then I teach up at Weber State in the evenings as well. I'm an adjunct instructor up there. That tells you how desperate they are for someone to go teach construction management classes, that they'll let me go up and teach. And then we have 5 kids. Our first 3 were boys. Our last 2 were girls. So we have a spread from 11 years old to 11 months. Oh my gosh. I'll spread out pretty even. It's fun. I don't know how it happened. Whenever I, call my mission buddies, it's been like 10 years since I've taught. They're like, dude, how do you have 5 kids? And I don't know what happened. I don't know. Bless my wife's heart. She does all the work. I just show up for moral support. But
oh, that's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. So with that, I can probably jump to the MTC. Anything I missed there?
I'm just curious to know where, time frame wise, when did you enter the MTC?
Just before Thanksgiving in 2007.
Okay. Nice.
I think it was, my journal dates aren't great. I think it was like the November 15th or November 20th. We were in the MTC for Thanksgiving.
Okay. Nice. And then you served November 07 to November 09, right?
Yes.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, just by all means, you can hop right into the MTC or wherever you want to start.
Cool. I'll kind of fly through the MTC. My companion was Elder Kyle Rose from New Hampshire. He served in one of the England missions. I forget which one. Something kind of cool with that. He had a twin brother who was called to serve in Scotland. So they were in the MTC at the same time. Twin brothers. One went to England, one went to Scotland. That was pretty cool. We had a decent sized group. I think we had probably close to 20 people. I'd say 12 or 13 were Americans, and then we had a few Germans, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some other nationalities, but it seemed like that was kind of a bigger sized group from what President Sorensen has said. I remember we hiked to Darwin's Tower. I had to go Google like where that was. It's just kind of a cool tower in the countryside, but there were like sheep on the way, and we're like, oh, this is so cool, like rolling green countrysides and sheep, like it's this is so British. So that was cool. I don't think we played much sports on P-Day. Some of the other missionaries, have had a lot of stories about playing sports, and I don't know if it was. I know it rained a whole bunch when we were in the MTC, so I don't know if the fields were too wet, but I don't really remember like doing basketball or soccer or anything like that. It was.
We've been told they shortened the time in the MTC overall, and then they cut out some of the athletic time. So that may be it too. Maybe.
I remember we walked into either Preston or Chorley. I forget what the little town center was, but I remember walking into that a couple times. I discovered my loves of crumpets and Nutella, and I don't know why, but I love diluted juice, which, like, in hindsight, that was the most disgusting drink. And even like, it was a dandelion burdock. It was some carbonated soda that was just disgusting. But for some reason, I don't know, I really liked that. I was one of the fat kids that would like sneak down to the cafeteria at night, and see how many like crumpets and honey and Nutella we could pound down before the cook came and kicked us out.
It wasn't just the fat kids, Drew. I promise you.
Okay.
It was most of us.
Yeah. I don't want to say that was the only good thing about the MTC, because that sounds really bad. And I enjoyed my MTC experience. I really did. But the crumpets they have a special place in my heart. Even to this day, I'll do anything for a good crumpet, I think.
Nice.
And then we did spend Thanksgiving in the MTC. The staff was nice and cooked us up a Thanksgiving dinner, and it was pretty good. We had turkey and stuffing, and
wow,
kind of surprises with that. We weren't really expecting a Thanksgiving dinner, but they took good care of us.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then from there, we took the train from Creston or Chorley up to Edinburgh. Really, the only thing I remember on that train ride, we had a really grumpy railway employee that, like, as we all got on, he came to us and he was like, "Hey, when that train stops in Edinburgh, like, you have 90 seconds to get all of your bags off of this train. Like, if they're not off, like, the doors are going to shut and you're going to get left." So, we're just like panicking. We had like a whole entire car full of all of our luggage. Yeah, I'll touch on some of that later. But yeah, we were all like petrified. So we got off in time, and I don't really remember. Everyone's talked about getting like grilled by the APs. I remember they were like intense, and they let you know pretty quick that they were in charge and you were new and green, and you would listen to them. But I don't really remember, the suitcase search or getting grilled, if you had a girlfriend or not, and like going through the pictures. I didn't really remember that. I think it was Elder Stringfellow and Elder Coford that were APs at the time. I think that's right. Someone may have to correct me on that. Did the awesome hike up to Pratt's Hill. I think that was all a pretty cool moment for all of us to go up there and dedicate ourselves. And that was neat. I remember it was wet, rainy, couldn't see much, super windy, but that was a cool experience to kind of go off on your own and dedicate yourself for the next 2 years. Yeah, we went back and got assigned to our companions. I got assigned with Elder Chad Bauckham, which wonderful podcast. If I could give a gold star for some of the better podcasts, Chad Bauckham would get it. I was hoping he had some more memories of us in Alloa, though. We were only together for 6 weeks, so his memories are kind of similar to mine. We just didn't have a whole lot of time together. But I do remember we got to the Stirling train station, and it was dark. It was probably, 4 or 5 p.m. So we had to get all of our luggage off from the train station. And you if anyone's been in Alloa or that Stirling train station, you walk up kind of that cobblestone road for not that far, maybe 200 or 300 yards, and there's a bus stop. We jumped on the bus stop, got on the motorway, just kind of past the Wallace Monument, not too far, and the bus broke down. I think there was actually like smoke coming into the cab.
Oh my gosh.
So they kicked us all off the bus. And it's like a Scottish downpour, right? Like, can't see anything. So Elder Bauckham's like, "Yeah, grab your stuff." And like, he's like, "We'll just start walking and figure something out." Like, and have no idea where we are, right?
Man.
Goodness.
Yeah. So this Mercedes blows past us and dives off onto the shoulder and like hits the hazards, and someone jumps out, and it was Bishop McClelland, who was the bishop of the ward at the time. And I was like, "Oh, awesome, we're saved." And he's like, "Oh, well, there's like, I wish I could give you a ride, but it's a nice Mercedes. It's brand new. My leather's nice. Like, you're sopping wet." He's like, "If I had some garbage bags, you could like sit in the garbage bags and sit in my car, but like, sorry." And he left us. Like,
He did.
No way.
Private road.
Oh gosh.
And my mom, I love her to death. She was so convinced that Scotland was a third world country. I had so much crap. I mean, like, through the tilt. I remember Elder Baukham's eyes when I got off that train. He was like, "What did you bring with you?" So anyways, eventually we got all of the Stirling elders who had a car. They came and picked us up, but at that point we were just drenched. Yeah. So they took us home to our flat an hour really fast. that has to be one of the worst flats I think that I lived in. You're like right across from the Primrose Bar. I think you're above another bar.
Oh my gosh.
Just yeah, and it wasn't that nice of an apartment. I think one of the missionaries before me, they'd been horse trying to like put a hole through the drywall. And of course, like nobody thought to fix that. Like, why would we call and fix the hole that someone put through the wall? Like, we'll just leave it.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. So that first night, we went out and gave a sister a blessing. This was so embarrassing. So Elder Bauckham was like, "Hey, like, it's Elder Allen's first day. Like, we'll have you give the blessing." So I'm like, "Oh, great." I remember the sister's name was Margaret Payton, but when I gave her her blessing, I addressed her as Peyton Manning. And I have no idea where that came from. So Elder Bauckham had to be like, "I'm out." Like, Peyton Manning. This is Margaret Payton. And I just remember thinking, like, "Oh my gosh, Elder Bauckham was just like, he's just like, I have all this luggage, I way overpacked. I think I took forever to get dressed because I was like drenched. I'm like, I'm going to dry off before we go back out. Elder Bauckham was like, let's go anyway. So that was awkward.
That tells you a lot about your personality and how you remember things, like word association. That's pretty good. That's hilarious.
It kind of reminds me, this is digressive, but it reminds me of The Office, right? When Michael Scott goes through like how he remembers people's names, like something similar, right?
That's right.
So that was awkward. I did not give Peyton Manning a blessing while on my mission, but I tried.
For and in behalf of.
Yeah, for reals.
Goodness.
First Sunday there, they had just baptized Sue Wood. I think Chad talked about her a little bit on his podcast. So I got to confirm her the first Sunday I was there. So that was really cool. That was actually the first time that I had met Sue. I think they were out of town for that week or something. So like that was literally like the first time I met her. I remember they showed up like a minute or two before sacrament meeting started, and we got them situated to sit by some members. I'm like, that was it. And that was a good experience. Something that Elder Bauckham was phenomenal at was like getting in a position where the Spirit was there, and then kindly forcing me to, I shouldn't say forcing, putting me in a spot that like I had to step in and let the Spirit lead, right? And like confirming Stu Wood was a perfect example of that. So that was really cool.
That is cool.
What wasn't cool though, and Elder Bauckham touched on this too, was like, once again, he'd get the Spirit there and just put me in like tough positions. So her son, we were teaching Joe Wood. He'd been taught for a little while, and that's when Chad was like, "Okay, you're going to go teach Joe the law of chastity." I'm like, "Oh, okay, like I can do that." So in companionship study, we go through like our lesson plan, So I have my index card that like, covers high level law of chastity. We're not going to have sexual relations with people that aren't our husband or our wife, and those things are safe for marriage. And Chad's like, "That's not specific enough." Well, like, what do you mean, Elder Bauckham? Like, that's the specific it gets. He's like, "Well, what about pornography? Like, are you going to teach him about that?" Well, I guess. Like, what exactly do you want me to say? And like, super detailed, He's like, "Well, he has a girlfriend, so you need to specify their things that, short of having sex, violate the law of chastity. Like, if so, like, you need to teach that to him." And I was like, "Okay." So like, all of a sudden, my 3x5 index card is just covered like front to back, And he was intimidating. Joe Wood, he was covered in tattoos, like pretty good beard, muscular guy, but it was just a good example of Elder Bauckham set, right? Like, we don't head behind generalities. We teach complete and full doctrine, and it was good. Joe ended up getting baptized, so that was cool. But I just remembered how just how awkward and intense it was. It was good though. It was good.
Jack, I don't think you did that to me as a greenie. There's no way.
No. Maybe if we'd had anybody progress that far.
That's fair. That's fair. Goodness.
Yeah, it was a good experience. Another fun memory was our ward mission leader. His name was Derek Campbell. Quiet, kind of soft-spoken guy. We meet every week and go over our progress record. And at this time, member missionary work was really pushing off. We were really trying to find people from the members to teach. And we had taught him a lesson and asked him for referrals. And he was like, "Elders, like, been in the church my whole life, been an outlaw my whole life, been a missionary my whole life. Like, if I had somebody prepared to teach, I would tell you." and somehow his granddaughter was there, and I can't remember. I don't think they lived with him, but she was like 9 or 10. And we asked him, like, well, what about your granddaughter? Like, does she want to be taught the lessons? And he was like, well, I don't know. I've never asked her. And so, like, we committed him pretty direct, like, well, will you invite her to take the lessons at our next meeting? And he's like, yeah, I'll try. And anyways, we came back and taught her, and she ended up getting baptized. So that was cool to get to teach her in Derek Campbell's home. And brother and sister Campbell there for the lessons. They really taught most of them, and we were just kind of there. So that was fun. And there's been a lot of talk on member missionary work and the difference in that, knocking doors, and that really set the tone pretty early for me. Was whether the member directly knows somebody or if you're blessed indirectly. Like there were blessings and miracles that we saw from doing member missionary work. So that was really cool. So yeah, those first 6 weeks just seemed like they were a constant barrage between teaching to baptizing to confirming to working with recent converts to less actives, working with the members. It was really the ideal first 6 weeks of the mission, and a lot of that goes to Elder Bauckham. Like just a stud, very well rounded. He still is that way. Had fun meeting with him at the last mission reunion and talking to him, remembering some of these fun memories.
Now, Elder Bauckham swore that the chip shop in Alloa was the best chip shop. Is that true?
So I have a note for that somewhere. Yeah, a little bit upset that Chad Bauckham claimed Alloa has the best chippy in Scotland. I don't ever remember him buying me a fish supper. Shame on him. That's verbatim on my notes. I don't remember that. But I did check his directions because he walked through. Like, I don't know what it's called, but you walk past the flat, you turn left, you turn right, and it's right there on the corner. And there is a fish house right there. I don't have any recollection of going there though, so a little bit upset about that.
That's the next time you go to Scotland, make sure he sends you some money.
Yeah.
Chad, you're on the hook. You owe Drew a fish supper.
And Chad's organized enough. He'll probably have a journal entry or a picture of us in front of it, with me holding an iron brew and a fish supper, and he'll rebuke me. And I'll be wrong, but that's okay.
That's amazing.
So we've touched a lot on Hammer Time, right? And I don't want to touch a whole lot on that, but I thought Elder Bauckham had a great balance of that. So I remember I showed up with all my music CDs, and a lot of them were classical or Disney CDs or not by no means apostate.
Yeah.
And I remember he had me read Good, Better, Best, like that I'd just been given at the conference before, I think in October. And he was like, I want you to read through that, and I want you to decide what category do these CDs fall into. And he didn't really push me or pressure me or correct me on it, but after reading that, he kind of helped me through, being yeah, if we're gonna do what's best, we probably should listen to Motab and the Brethren and church music, and Moulin's great, but you're probably not gonna feel the spirit, with some of that. And Chad was so good at that. He never unrighteously rebuked me. He was very good at doing it in a loving way, and I think that's the way Hammer Time really was meant to be, and didn't always stay that clean. But I was grateful for the way that he kindly corrected me in a way I didn't feel like I was being corrected, and that was cool.
Interesting.
Cool. Spent my first Christmas there. I remember we were at Elder Care's house, and this may have been the week after or something, but it was when I think BYU played UCLA in the Las Vegas Bowl. And I'm not a huge football fan. I just remember this because of how loud Elder Care was screaming. But I think UCLA had a chance to kick a 20-yard field goal to win as time expired, and BYU blocked it. So I just remember him just screaming and yelling and jumping up and down. I think the only other time I've heard him be louder is when he's singing opening songs and sacrament meetings. But
that's true. I agree.
Yeah. Another fun. What I had here? I was reading through my journal. What's the earliest you think it got dark when you were there in Scotland? I had to go do a sanity check on myself. What would your guess be?
I mean, it depends on what part of the country you were in, but Alloa, I'm trying to think. I mean, wintertime, I was in the Isle of Orkney, and I was in Montrose. So Montrose, it was probably about 4:30, 5 o'clock ish, I think, is kind of timeline wise.
Yeah, so you have to go check. So it said the Aloha thing that I looked up on the sunrise and sunset chart. Sunset at 3:40 p.m. and that was for like the shortest day of the year. That was less than 7 hours of sunlight. So I remember that for like being my first year, right? Like just dark gray and like doesn't get light till late. It gets dark so soon. Like
Yeah, interesting.
Kind of depressing, but.
You may have had better technology to figure that stuff out. We're kind of dinosaurs compared to you, Drew.
No, I doubt that. I doubt that. I remember attending President Hinckley's funeral in the Aloha Chapel. That was when he passed away. Being there when they had the Piper play "Oh Danny Boy," like that was pretty cool. That really touched the heartstrings to be there and hear the pipes playing.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was cool. So yeah, I was only with Elder Blockham for 6 weeks, and then he transferred out, and Elder Anthony Paternoster transferred, and he was from Essex, England. He had just come from being a zone leader, and I forget which zone. This was my first exposure to a British companion. We love the Brits, but they're kind of quirky, right? Like, remember Elder Paternoster showed him these like tight-fitted gloves and like his like gloves color coordinated his scarf and the cool like pointy shoes. We got along really well, but I just remember being like, who is this guy? He was so meticulous with everything, which I could do better at. He introduced me to a prawn sandwich, which was just disgusting. He like count out how many shrimp he had. And he stayed skinny and had a jawline his whole mission, and this is probably why, right? Or like he'd go get a fish stick sandwich and like meticulously like lay out his fish sticks, and it was just a little bit different.
It's amazing.
We were able to find and baptize a sister. I think she fancied Elder Paternoster more than anything. He was very charming, but yeah, I think she had a little bit of a crush for him. One of my favorite sayings, and I still say this from Elder Paternoster, he'd always say, "It's not a competition, Elder, but if it was, you'd be losing." I always thought it's funny. I think Elder Kuhn it was Elder Day. He talked a little bit about my Book of Death. Elder Paternoster was just disgusted by it, right? Like, I didn't know. Like, I grew up hunting my whole life. I still hang dead animals in my office. And Elder Paternoster was just disgusted. I had one picture when I'd been swan hunting, and I'm holding a swan, and I get this like speech that this is the queen's bird, and like how unholy it is to shoot a swan. He was not impressed by the Book of Death, which that's okay. So yeah, I was only with him for 6 more weeks, and then I transferred out to Dundee Lift Road. I was there with John Kuhn, who you've also interviewed. He did a great job. Really enjoyed time with Elder Kuhn. So I think at that point I'd been out, 18 weeks, and he'd been out either like 6 or 12 weeks. So we were both green. We were young and hungry though. I remember it was either the train station or a flat. Elder McCullers and Elder Waite were the zone leaders, and they showed up, and I don't know what they hammered us for. Maybe just that we were new, and they just wanted to like let us know how new we were. But they just hammered us. Like, we didn't have anybody in our teaching pool. I don't think no one was progressing. And they're like, by the end of the day, like, you better find a family to bring to church on Sunday. And this is the end of the day on a P day. Another Kuhn and I are just like, oh my gosh, like, how are we going to make this happen? But we were blessed, and we did. We found a couple named Simon and Grace. They had a little baby, like maybe a month or two, like just a little baby. And anyways, we invited them to come to church, and they came. And that was a cool faith building experience for Elder Kuhn and me. And that kind of sums up like how all of Dundee Lift Road was with Elder Kuhn. Was just like nothing short of miracles, and just being blessed, and like a very generous and loving God, because we could have been like humbled, and then we still were humbled, right? Like you still go through those days that are just terrible. But that was really cool. They called us. Gave us a commitment one day. We needed to find like 5 new investigators by the end. This is when you get a phone call from your zone leader like every hour, right, with a new assignment or a report on a different assignment. And the assignment was you have to find like 5 new investigators by the end of the day. And I think we had like 3 or 4. And so we were actually driving back to our flat in the car, and I don't know if Elder Kuhn was driving around us, but like we pulled over and like jumped out of the car to talk to this guy, because it was almost the end of the day. The streets were kind of empty, and He was like, yeah, like you can come back, whatever. Like, here's my address. Come back another day. So we did, and that's when we chapped into Irene Finley, which that was the cool picture that has all the cigarettes, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so and I won't talk too much on that because other coon did, but a couple things that I was going to touch on. Let's see. So I think she'd recently just had a death of a close friend or a family, because for the first lesson we taught her the plan of salvation, and that was not normal. Like usually we would always teach the restoration. It was pretty rare we didn't teach the plan of salvation, but we taught that for our first lesson, so that was kind of cool. So she went to Spain to buy all the cigarettes, remember, to avoid paying taxes on them. That's what it was. And I mean, and I did the math, but I forgot to write it down, like how many boxes there were. I think there was like 30 cases, and there's like 10 boxes a case or something. So I don't know what that equates to dollar wise.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, we committed her to live the word of wisdom. She said she would. So we did the 12-step like addiction recovery program. We brought her the grapefruit juice and the cinnamon toothpaste. We don't have a clue what we're doing, right? We've never taught this before. But it was cool. I think she went 3 weeks straight without smoking or drinking at all, and got baptized. One funny story that I don't know if other coons said. So we confiscated all those cigarettes, and I think Dennis Campbell had been with us on that joint teach, and so he asked us at the end. He's like, "Well, what are you going to do with all those cigarettes, elders?" And we're like, "Well, we're going to go throw them away or something." And I think he worked at he was either a care home for people that were like in a psychiatric ward, or maybe they had like Alzheimer's or schizophrenia, and a lot of those like to smoke. So they would give him like 2 or 3 cigarettes a day. So he was like, "I want all those cigarettes." Another kid and I were just like, this is weird, right? Like the high priest group leader wants all of our cigarettes. And so other kid and I went through this thing like, is the sin on our head if we give him these cigarettes? Like, recontributing to someone else breaking the commandments. We ended up giving him the cigarettes, and I don't know what he did with them, but I think we were probably overly clear with him, like, hey, if this gets into the wrong hands, like we're washing our hands of it, and you have to account for it, not us. But that was awkward. That was a fun district. We had sisters in there. We had Sister Andrea Holmquist and Sister Lauren Knowles. That just kind of added to the awkwardness of being a young companionship. So I was district leader at the time. I guess kind of awkward enough to be around the sisters, right? And then you throw in like, it's hammer time, but you can't hammer time sisters, but you're getting hammered by the zone leaders. And bless both of their hearts. I'm sure they have some horror stories that I forgot about having to deal with us. Elder and Sister Manwaring were in that district, and they'd be awesome to get on the podcast. They're from Pocatello, Idaho. We've sent them the link. They know about it, so I can give you their contact info. But yeah, they were fantastic. They were up in Montrose, so you'd probably appreciate getting to talk to them.
That would be nice.
I remember they'd make us breakfast after district meetings and invite us over for dinner occasionally. They were great. The bishop and ward mission leader at the time, remember, they were not overly friendly. And I don't know the background. There wasn't any like 6 a.m. baptizing behind the bishop's backstory that I'm aware of. It just took a while to gain their trust and earn it from them. I remember, in fact, I think it may have actually been Irene. Like we were trying to baptize her, and like the ward council was like very opposed to us baptizing her just because of like the fact that she'd smoked, and that was kind of an eye opener, right? My first interaction with Bishop McClellan wasn't the best, and then kind of get into this ward, and it's like we're finding excuses to not baptize people, and anyway, I just remember that was kind of an eye opener. Luckily, I think Elder Kuhn and I kind of had. I don't know, I guess you could say a people-pleasing personality. Like we didn't want to go cause contention and stir things up, so we didn't. And it took a while to build those relations, but they got there. Like that was a fantastic ward, right between the Keoghs and the Topans and all of the Campbells, the Roys, Blair Mitchell, Duncan Tasker was in that ward at the time. Like just a lot of great members. Just even that was really for a pretty short time that I was there. One funny story I wish Elder Kuhn would have told. We were driving through one of those pedestrian-only zones. Well, we weren't supposed to be driving through a pedestrian-only zone, but we were. And Elder Kuhn was driving. So this great big officer like steps in front of the car and stops him. And he was of an African American descent, so he comes up to the window and like knocks on the door, and Elder Coon rolls the window down. He's like, what are you doing? And Elder Coon kind of stumbles, and he's like, well, what's your name? And Elder Coon's like, Coon. And the officer's like, excuse me? And he's like, that's my name. My name's Coon. And the officer is just like way offended. He's like, you're telling me that's your name? And he's like, well, yeah, John Coon. So anyways, he's like, well, give me your driver's license. And Elder Coon's like, I don't have one, because he didn't have his British driver's license yet. It just kept going from like bad to worse.
Oh, man.
Like everything that officer asked, Elder Coon just made it like more and more awkward. And luckily, I think the cop told us, like, get out of the pedestrian free zone and don't do dumb things and let us go. That was funny. So yeah, we served together. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say there's probably a good reason why John forgot that story.
Yeah, it sounds pretty dramatic.
A little mortified.
Yeah, I wanted to remind him of it. It was good. So yeah, we served together for 2 transfers. Then I transferred to Dundee. Being I was one of those that like every moves I transferred. I must have just drove people nuts. So Elder Coon was only one of 3 companions that I had for more than 6 weeks. Enjoyed my time with him. So then I went to Dundee Bingham Ward, and I was there with Elder Andy Harper. He'd be another great one to have on. He's from Idaho, but he lives up in Alaska right now. Same thing, pretty young companionship. I think Elder Harper had been out for 12 weeks or so. We didn't have a car for most of our transfers. I don't know if anybody else has felt like this, but like Bingham Ward was one of the best like member supported wards. It was so hard to find people to teach in that ward. We just got our butts kicked with trying to find and teach people. I remember we found one guy's name was Mr. Scrimger. We knocked into him. He didn't have any furniture. Like his electric was never on because he would spend all his money on like that cheap white lightning stuff that you'd walk in and would just like make you dry heave. But he let us in. He let us teach him. So I told Elder Harper, I was like, hey, I got this. Like Irene Finley, she quit smoking. She gave us all of our cigarettes. Like she quit no problems. Like we'll just do this addiction recovery program. So we did. And he came to church maybe like the 2nd or 3rd after he'd been sober, and he started having like many seizures in church because he was having like alcohol withdrawals. He was like drooling out of his mouth and like, I shouldn't laugh, and like partly throwing up, and like it was legit because he was like having withdrawals from all of his alcohol.
My goodness.
Wow.
And like that was a wake up call, right? You're not exposed to that. At least I wasn't exposed to that in Utah. Like, you hear some of like recreational drinking, but like, to see the chains of addiction that bad was just sad, right?
Yeah.
That was also the first area that we had investigators shoot up in front of us. It was just like everyone we found was on drugs, like, and we weren't just focusing on one area. Like we would go to all different parts of our area, and it was like everybody we found was either on drugs or would come to church and have a seizure because they needed a drink.
Goodness.
Yeah. Elder Harper was kind. I started referring to Dundee as Scumdee at that time just because it was like so tough, and he was like, Elder, like, you can't call it Scumdee and expect the Spirit to lead us or guide us to people, and he was right. Dundee was just tough. I remember Elder Harper had his driving test at this point, so I was driving him there, and I didn't see it, but I guess there was like a manhole lid like in the roundabout, like flipped upside down, and I hit it and blew out like our back tire, and we're like 2 minutes before his appointment. So we pulled over in some like Asda parking lot and changed that tire in like no time. We didn't know if they let us take the test on a donut tire or not, but they did. Sadly, Elder Harper did not pass. Bingham Ward was just tough. I remember this is kind of in front of our flat. We stopped a guy and he asked me, he said, do you know how to box? And I was like, well, not why. And he's like, well, because if you don't leave in 5 seconds, I'm going to punch your teeth out. Like it was like every conversation with someone was either like a threat of violence or of drugs. Really looked forward to going to Brodie Ferry and Cooper with the others on exchanges. Once again, the ward support was phenomenal. All the Snee family, the Mays, the Galilees, Maureen Smith, the Campbells, McPhee. Like there's a long list here of people. Like the member support was great. I always had dinner appointments. You always felt welcome at church. It was so hard to find and teach people in that area. I would argue with Elder Bockham. I would say that the best fish and chip shop I found was at Anstruther Fish Bar, which was conveniently in the zone. So I remember we'd go to St. Andrews. Did you guys ever go to St. Andrews and play the miniature golf course, like the Himalayas?
No,
I never played that. No.
It's cool. So it's like right at the clubhouse, and you pay like, I don't know, $5 or $6, and you can go out and it's cool. It's crazy greens, and they call it the Himalayas because it's like, huge rolling hills. And we went and played that a few times, and that was fun. Yeah, didn't really teach anybody that progressed real great. Didn't really have a whole lot of faith building experiences. Bingham was tough. So after 6 weeks, I transferred to Edinburgh Meadows, and I moved there with Elder Jordan Sperry. He's also from Utah. And same thing, I think he'd been out for, I don't know, 12 weeks or 3 months or something like that. And this was kind of weird. So we came into that area, and they had a few investigators scheduled for baptism. And I think this was at the time they kind of changed the rule that you could only teach investigators that were in your area, because there was like 9 companionships or some crazy number in the Edinburgh Ward, and it was just kind of like a free for all. And anyway, so a missionary was going home when they made this change, and I think his parents were going to pick him up. So he went and told like their whole teaching pool, "Hey, those only are trying to poach you just for the numbers. Drop them. Like they don't really care about you." It was kind of a weird deal. So anyway, so I walked in there, and that happened like the day I got there. So we went from that area having a few people confirmed for scheduled for baptism to like no one. It's like, oh, great.
Oh, goodness.
And yeah, that was a hard area too. This in hindsight, maybe your mind's more clear, right? So same thing. We'd get on a bus and ride like 45 minutes. So we lived up in Bruntsville, right by the Meadows, really nice area. But then our area was like clear down Leith Road and like down towards like Niddry and Musselburgh and kind of that area. So we'd be like a 45, 50-minute bus ride into our area. I don't know. I didn't think to just call the office. I was like, "Hey, we're wasting, 2-3 hours a day on a bus. Like, could we swap apartments with someone who's like right next to our area?" Which there was, but we didn't think through that at all, and I don't understand why. But yeah, we spent a lot of time on buses. Really not a whole lot exciting with Elder Sperry. We didn't teach a whole lot. It was kind of tough. I don't even know where Elder Sperry spent the rest of his mission. He needs to come back on. We were together for 6 weeks, and then he transferred out. And I stayed, and that's when I trained Elder Craig Day, who you just had on the podcast. His was hilarious. I still can't see his face without thinking of Mr. Bean. He reminds me of Mr. Bean so much. But I loved Elder Day. Also very British. It's funny when he was like, all he did was talk about like George Bush and his Book of Death or something, and like all I remember about Elder Day was talking about like how great it is to be ruled by a royal family or something. So there was some fun banter back and forth there. I remember the pressure to train somebody, right? I mean, President Frederick would always say like one of the biggest responsibilities is training, and if you screw up a missionary's first 6 weeks, like shame on you. The expectation was you'd find and teach and baptize, like set a very high bar, kind of what Elder Bockham had done. I totally slaughtered that, kind of like Elder Day said. I don't know. We found that one investigator, Maggie. She'd been taught in England for years and years. Moved to Edinburgh. She had some drinking issues, but we taught her for, I want to say 4 or 5 weeks, and like she had kept the word of wisdom, and it wasn't just like 1 or 2 days. She kept it, like, let's go baptize her. She kept it for multiple weeks, and we scheduled her for baptism. She got baptized. She was the one that did not show up for her confirmation. And I forget who the bishop was, but man, the bishop just ripped into me. I felt really bad on that Sunday. And rightfully so. Like, I understand what he's saying. He's like, now I've got to go, try and finish this confirmation because now she's showing up. And anyways, that was bad. And she just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. lost contact with us, wouldn't answer her door. Don't really know where she went. I hope at some point she she comes and finishes. So the only thing worse than one investigator getting baptized and not confirmed is two. And that's where Stephen Beveridge comes into play. And Elder Day talked on him quite a bit. This was probably one of those that, we were finding reasons to baptize people. And this was, we got an assignment to go through our area book and see who'd been to church 3 or 4 times before and get them to church on Sunday and baptize them before the end of the moves. And we went and taught Stephen. He'd been to church. He'd been taught quite a bit. Committed him to baptism. He said he would. So I think he came to church 2 or 3 times with us. This was the one that we had to fill the font with a garden hose from the mission home because the font was broke. Everything about baptisms and in the meadows was just tough. So yeah, he got baptized / boiled alive. That water was so hot, but and he also did not show up for his confirmation. But this one was weird. And the other day I think talked on this. But we show up and he has it's like sheet metal. He has 5/8 inch sheet metal over his whole entire door. They'd gone and I guess evicted him and put up this metal on the door so you couldn't knock on the door. You couldn't even access the flat that he lived in. So that was bizarre. Yeah, not good. And that was also the same time we were teaching Keith Hutt, which he talked about. He came to church 4 or 5 times, committed him for baptism. He said yes. Then he never showed up to his baptism. We had the font filled members there. I'm sure that bishop just hated my guts.
Goodness.
Yeah. I can see why I did not stay in Edinburgh for very long. One cool thing though, so our area was kind of weird. I talked on that, but we only had 2 or 3 members in our area, and they were all older senior sisters. So one of the sisters we stopped by, and I think she had a full-time job, but her adult son was there and lived with her, which we didn't know about. So he invited us in, and we started teaching him the lessons, and he was there all day, every day. So we'd probably teach him, I'd say 5 or 6 times a week. And same thing, he started out with a big gnarly beard, kind of like Keith Hutt did. Shaved his beard, started dressing nicer for our lessons. He loved to smoke cannabis, but he told us he'd cut it back pretty substantially, and I don't think there was a whole lot of pressure from us to do so. Then they had the weirdest thing though. We were in our ward missionary meeting, and the ward mission leader was yeah, his mom's requested that you don't teach him, you don't invite him to be baptized. And we're what in the world? We finally found somebody good to teach that was progressing and keeping appointments and member work, and we got told to not teach him anymore. So that was kind of odd.
Yeah.
That was a fun district though. The Korsorfen elders were in there. So Elder Aaron Heemer, he's from Germany. I've totally lost contact with him. That would be fun to hear from him. The Leith elders, Elder Sam Webb, he was from England, and then Elder Kellen Whetstone. He'd be fun to have. And then I think there were 3 senior sisters in that district as well. I think they were doing indexing names or something. I forget exactly what they were doing. Yeah, fun being on that many missionaries though, and getting to go to play soccer with that many people or go to castles. Edinburgh was tough though. That was a tough area for me. So after 12 weeks, I transferred out of Inverness. I transferred out of the Meadows and went to Inverness. Did not leave a great impression on Elder Day, I don't think. So I'm glad to hear that he survived the rest of his mission, and that it wasn't like his first 6 weeks was, because that was, that was a tough area. Went to Inverness. That was great. Served with Elder Brandon Wayne. He was from Missouri. He and I shared some sacred and holy inner redneck, which was nice. He loved to hunt and fish and do all things redneck. So that was fun. I remember we went fishing up near Strathpeffer on some private stocked lake or something. And it was expensive. I think the guy just totally took advantage of it. He made us rent a pole, rent bait, pay a trophy fee to fish a pond. We didn't see another person or another fish. He probably just sent us to some empty farm pond and just took our money and laughed at us. But I loved Inverness. It was fun to just kind of be, coming from Edinburgh with that many missionaries and being around that many people all the time. It was fun to just be us, and just kind of focus on teaching and not have to worry about long bus rides to get in your area and some of that. That branch was small, right? Maybe 20 people or so on a Sunday. So we got to know a lot of those members. Really good. Had some fun experiences with them. We did find an awesome investigator. His name was Liam McGrady. We just chapped into him. I think we were visiting members and knocking either side, or we may have stopped him on the street to or from a member's appointment. He was living with his girlfriend in Inverness at the time, but after a few weeks of teaching him, they conveniently split up. And so he moved back in with his parents, who lived close by. And so that worked out well for us, probably not so much for him. But his family lived in a really cool farm. It's near Balblair. So you're actually across the Cromarty Firth from Invergordon. And I don't think we would have ever gone out there if we didn't have a reason, but to go teach him. So we taught him out there a lot. Kind of a cool, little old farm bothy that they lived in. His stepdad was doing something about growing sweet potatoes. He was really excited. I think he thought that we had money or something, because he kept hitting us up to back his business. Like he was going to, break into the Scottish market with potatoes of all things. I'm like, man, that's the worst business idea I've heard, is to try to find a way to get more potatoes to Scotland. But but that was fun. So yeah, he ended up getting baptized. That was when we taught. He had his own car, which was awesome. I have an investigator that had transportation. Right, we would just set up cottage evenings at each member's home throughout the week and just teach another member's home. So that was really fun. He ended up getting baptized, so that was nice and confirmed. So it was nice to break that bad streak that had been on. One really weird story. Did either of you serve in Inverness?
Not served, but definitely been there a few times.
I'd like to know who was responsible for this. But so there was a garage next to the flat, and it had a chest freezer in it. And someone had unplugged that chest freezer, but it was full of meat, like all the way full. I have a video of it, and it's disgusting. So I think it was Elder Wells and Elder Gardner, and they were the zone leaders at the time, and Elder Wayne and I. We got it all put into a garbage can. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. At this time, they were really big on the mileage with the car, right? I think we had 52 miles a day or something. You could not exceed that. So we were like, well, we'll start riding our bikes and bank miles in the car so we can go to more areas. And so I think when we were looking for bikes, we were like, why does it smell like something dead and rotting in the garage? And that's what it was this chest freezer. And it was so disgusting. We opened the door, and there was maggots and flies, and it was gross. Ugh. So whoever did that and unplugged it, not cool. Not cool. Yeah, so that was one thing that was kind of disappointing in Inverness, is we were really held to that standard on our mileage. We could go. I think we went to the Invergordon branch every other week on a Sunday, but that was really about as far as we went. We didn't really get to see a whole lot of the Highlands, which that was a bummer. I wish we could have had a chance to go see more members and experience some more of that countryside, but we didn't. After 6 weeks, Elder Wayne transferred out, and Elder Craig Needham came and served with me. He's another Brit. He was from, I think, Nottingham. I think it was at this time Invergordon branch really started to push hard for missionaries, and President Frederick lovingly told them, well, if you want missionaries, find investigators for them to teach, and they'll be there. And the members did, actually. They found, I think it was one of the members, actually, they waited for their kids to be 10 or 11-year-olds to get baptized. And they wanted them to, I guess they felt 8 was too early. So they waited till they were older. So they called us and said, hey, our son's ready to be taught. You can come teach him, invite him to be baptized, just treat him like an investigator. So we did. He got taught and baptized, which was cool. And kind of same thing as Liam. It was fun. We would just rotate through members' homes to go teach them in. So that was kind of fun to get to rotate through all those members and be, spend time in their homes teaching them. That was really it. And I don't have any cool stories in Inverness. I love that area. Excuse me. I love that area. nothing bad to say about it, but it was kind of boring. We didn't have anything crazy.
Sometimes
That's
not
okay.
having crazy is okay. Yeah, you just status
Yeah.
quo is just fine.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So yeah, Inverness was good. And then after that, I got transferred to Bridge of Dawn in Aberdeen. And I was there with Elder Demita, also from England. I didn't realize how many British companions I had until I started going through all this. I got gypped. Like 50% of my companions, were from the UK. But I guess that's okay. Elder Demita was a professional chef back home, which was just phenomenal. So during like we do district planning in the morning, maybe for half an hour, he would do like a full proper English fry up. Like every morning, he was doing fried tomatoes and beans. And at this point, I had found out that it was a lie. You couldn't eat black pudding. I was disappointed that I'd missed out on that for that long on my mission, because it was wonderful. And Elder Demita made just a delicious black pudding breakfast. We taught a lot of students from Ghana in Nigeria. They were all there at the university studying like oil engineering or something. It was like we'd find like one person to teach, and we'd teach them. And like, okay, we're going to come back tomorrow. Do you have any friends you can invite? And we'd show up, and there'd be like 10 Nigerians in one of these like little tiny apartments, up on campus. But it was fun. We taught a lot of people. We baptized a few guys from Nigeria and from Ghana. And so that was cool. Kind of same thing. We were able to teach them in a lot of people's homes. And I don't know why this sticks out, but I think at some point, Ivan Williamson had reached out and said like, hey, I maybe haven't been a huge proponent of missionary work because it's been too pushy, but like I'd like to open my home up for a cottage evening. Can you invite some people over? And we did, and that just started being like a standing weekly thing. We'd go teach people in his home, and that was awesome. Ivan and Danny and Sister Williamson were all so good to open their home and to come teach whoever they want, or whoever we wanted to in their home. I've got a picture. Remind me at the end. I've got a few pictures pulled up, and we can look through some of those. We spent Christmas this time in Aberdeen, and I think someone mentioned Liz Stamp. I think she's originally from either Canada or the United States, but they were on vacation for Christmas, so she just opened up her house to us. She gave the keys to one of the missionaries, and she's like, "Oh yeah, like come use my oven, come use my stovetop, like come do whatever you want for Christmas." I just remember thinking that was so weird. Like I would never do that to missionaries. I'd never give them the keys to my house. But she would do anything for the missionaries. And that was convenient with Elder Demita being a phenomenal cook. We ate really well. We invited some recent converts and some members over, and had a fun Christmas. I can never think about Aberdeen without like the image of walking up Union Street with those Christmas lights burned into my mind. It's just funny, some of the images that you keep, and that's definitely one from Bridge of Dawn. Another really fun district there, right? Elder Padraig Brophy, he'd be a good one to find. He's from Ireland. He was in the district. Elder Robert Urey, Nate Hawks, Elder Lovell, I think he was just on. Sister Ott, Sister Barry, Sister Roberts, Sister Chandler. I made a note here. Like poor Sister Ott, I think she was stuck with me for, I want to say like 9 or 10 months straight. It was like wherever I would get moved to, like she would follow me. And I remember like one point we were kind of like giving their moves call or something, and she was like, "Will you please stop following?" She may not have even said please. She was like, "You need to go somewhere else." She's like, I am so sick of you. So I don't think I've heard her since I've been back. But bless her heart, she had to put up with me like going all across Scotland. She's probably burned out. Yeah. So after 6 weeks with Elder Demita, he got transferred out. Another Chase Crockett came in. I trained him. He's from Salt Lake. He'd be a great one to get on. I know he's been listening, so here's your call out, Chase. You need to get on. He was also a chef, which was just fantastic, going like back to back with chefs. Still phenomenal for that. Couldn't get him to do like the proper British fry up every morning like Elder Demita would do. I was a little bit disappointed in that, but all in all, his cooking skills were phenomenal. We found a couple more Nigerians that we taught and baptized. There was a member named Gary Osahon Igenbor. I think he was from Ghana, from Accra. And so he'd invite us over for dinner appointments. And the one time we showed up and he had like a pot full of like chicken feet. It was just like chicken feet. There was like feathers in the soup, and it was like, he was so happy to like cook us dinner, and it was so nice. And it was bad. There were probably like very few dinner appointments I can say like it was bad, but that one was tough. I was nervous with other Crockett, right? My last training experience had been like nothing short of a dumpster fire. So I was really worried with other Crockett. I was like, boy, like if we have a repeat of any of the three baptism debacles, like I'm going to get sent home or something. But we found a guy named William Skillen. We were able to teach him, and William was weird. So the first like 3 or 4 weeks, he started out like solid. He'd come to church, keep all of his commitments, keep all of his appointments. And I always wonder if he was like bipolar, because we'd committed him to get baptized, and like a week before his baptism or something, he just got weird. Like you couldn't carry like a normal conversation with him. I don't know. It was just weird. And so I remember like calling the zone leaders and being like, look, it's kind of weird. Like we've taught him everything. He's committed, but like something's off. So anyways, they came and interviewed him, and they said, hey, he interviewed fine. He has an understanding, so baptize him. So we did. And after he got confirmed, he did get confirmed, which is great. He stood up in front of the ward and wanted to like give a speech in front of the whole congregation. Brother Neil Adam was the ward missionary, and he was like motioning to other Crockett, and I like come grab him and make him sit down. Like, no, like he's been confirmed. He's yours at this point. And, anyways, he said, I mean, he didn't say anything inappropriate. He was saying thank you, like thanks for welcoming me to the ward, and just one of those like no one was expecting him to stand up front and give a speech. So that was nice. That brought a little bit of relief after the Elder Day debacle. And then I think we found one other Indian guy that ended up getting baptized after I left the area. I was only with other Crockett for 6 weeks. And then I transferred again. But I remember those P days going to like Dunatar Castle. That castle was so cool, right? We went and did a lot of hill climbing. We'd go with the zone leaders and go do that. Lots of soccer and football with both of those Aberdeen wards close by. Aberdeen was good. So yeah, after 6 weeks, I transferred to Irvine, and I was with another British man at this point, other Sean Waite, which he needs to get on. Do you have him committed yet? He told me he'd go like back and forth and cancel. What's the story?
Let me check my schedule, and you carry on. I'll let you know what we got.
Yeah, if not, it would probably be appropriate for one of you two to call him and just hammer him to come. I've tried to hammer him a little bit, but he's just being a little avoidant. That's all. Loved Elder Waite. He's just a little tiny guy, just skinny. He's bald, glasses, and he thought he was so tough. I just remember that, like he would talk like he was the toughest man. I was like, Elder, you weigh like 140 pounds or something. Like you have no hair, you got glasses. Like you sure talked really tough for just being a little British guy. But he was awesome. He introduced me very lovingly to the Irvine youth on day one. So we showed up to mow a recent convert's lawn, and I was introduced to what getting scanted meant. Have any of you ever heard of getting scanted?
Nope.
I hadn't either. It's when someone pulls your pants down like all the way to the ankles, right? So I'm in gym shorts mowing this lady's lawn, and like Jack Wild, jumps out from behind a bush and like scants me all the way to my ankles, grabs the keys to our car, and like jumps in our car and takes off down the street. Like I haven't met him. Like I don't know what's going on. They drove our car on the block. They'd come back and we'd like almost get the car back, and then they'd drive off again. And this probably went on for like 30 or 40 minutes. They finally came back. We start mowing the lawn again, do a little better job of hiding the keys. They had like water balloons hid in this member's backyard. So then they start like water ballooning us. And it turns out, I guess, right before I was there, I think Elder Lee was there. And they could bully him to a breaking point. I think that he would just like lose his mind. So they were trying to find my breaking point very early on, but they were brutal. we had a lot of fun memories with those elders. But I think they broke into our flat a couple times. We got egged one time, like they stole all of our ties. So it was like a Sunday morning, and we couldn't find ties to wear to church because somehow Luke and Jack and Manny had got into our flat. So that was interesting. An interesting first day in the area, but it was good. At this point in the mission, we've been taught to GQ very direct. Like the concept was if like people are prepared and they're out there, if they want to progress, you need to ask them a direct question. So like, Zach, if you knew there was one true church on the earth today, would you want to be baptized into it? Like you'd either say yes or no, right? Yeah. We were great at that, and people were great at saying no right up front. So yeah, we didn't teach a whole lot. We did teach a couple of rock stars. Jack and Laney, they had a metal garage band that they would like set up in their living room and play for us. They had like the leather jackets, like the metal studs on the shoulder pads, big mohawks. But another one of those that just the chains of addiction was really tough with them, and they didn't really progress. And at this point, we got asked to start going onto the Stranraer branch a little bit more. So that was fun to get to go see some of all of that coastal area. Spent a lot of time with President McRobb and the Corrigan family, which I guess President McRobb passed away a couple of years ago. I don't know if anybody served around him, but I was trying to find him, and I think he had some sort of a cancer or something and passed away. So that was sad, but they were so happy to have missionaries back. I think it had been quite a while since they'd had missionaries in that little branch. And so that was fun. Did find a couple families to teach in Stranraer that came to church, but no one progressed too far. 6 weeks later, Elder Waite transferred out. Another Jake Mulford came into the area, so that was cool. That was the guy that I had like the awkward first date with over the brownies and ice cream back before we left. Same group as me, so that was fun to be around him. Elder Mulford's kind of famous. He was a extra in High School Musical. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that, but that was like the best finding technique that we could have. Like we would do an intro, and if people would start to away, Jake would be like, "Hey, have you ever seen a High School Musical?" Like, I was in that. So that was fun. That was more effective than other weights, and like very direct, like, you know, do you want to live with your family forever? And then get told no, and be like, well, that person wasn't elect. Like Jake was, he was very good at just connecting with people. He was very genuine, very sincere. So that was fun. Found a few member referrals that we taught with there. But this is probably one of the coolest things of my mission. So the members were burned out, right? Like they'd done such a great job on member work, and they'd been asked so much for referrals. Like they were tired. And so we kind of reset, and like we're just going to commit them to fast and pray that we can find a family to teach. And so I think like in the course of a week or two, we went to every member's home and gave them the same commitment. I didn't really ask them for referrals, just said like, hey, we want to find a family that's prepared. Like, will you fast and pray for us? And it wasn't too long after that we found the Quell family. So there was Joy and Gary, who were married, and then they had Daryl, their son, and Piper, who was their young daughter. And they were one of those that was just like a godsend, right? Like they were so prepared. They progressed well. They understood the doctrine well. They didn't really have any huge concerns to overcome. It was really fun to teach them. Had a beautiful home. Like we were able to teach them in their home or take them to members' homes. And I can't remember for sure how we found them. So she was really good friends with Sister Ferguson, and I think they went to school together back in the day. And I don't know if Sister Ferguson maybe referred her to us or what. But anyways, it was cool to see that the whole ward had been praying to find this family. All of a sudden, it's like families start showing up to church. And that was neat. It was kind of a bummer. Elder Mulford got transferred out, I think, to go be the assistant at this point. So he was only with me for 6 weeks, and then he transferred out. And Elder Cody Ruche moved in with me, and he was also in the same MTC group. So that was kind of fun to get to have two back-to-back missionaries. Finished baptizing the Quell family. That was awesome. We taught them all the recent convert lessons in members' homes. That was a good faith-building experience, I think, for everybody. And then that terrible like swine flu pandemic hit. And Elder Duche was just sick as a dog, and I don't think it ever got like confirmed that that's what he was, but it was right in the thick of when it was just blowing up in Scotland. I think we were stuck in our flat for like 2 weeks or something.
Oh man.
I was prideful and didn't want to sit in there, so I would set up exchanges and actually leave. And I think this was really close to when I think President Griffiths had come in at this point, because somehow he got word that I was like leading on exchanges. He called me and very lovingly told me, like, don't do stupid things. The swine flu is really contagious. Like, you need to be in your apartment with Elder Duche. So I felt bad with that Elder Duche. He was really sick, but we had fun teaching the quails, and that was just an awesome war, right? People in the past have talked about between President Yates and Bishop Govans and all the Wild family, and all the Irvin youth, like just a really fun ward. You never had a shortage of dinner appointments or member lessons. Beautiful area. I loved Irvin. After those 6 weeks with him, I got transferred back to Scumdee, which broke my heart a little bit. Back to Bingham Ward. Excited to be in Bingham Ward. This was summertime, like beautiful, right? This was, I think, like maybe August through when I went home at the end of November. Weather was great. Just had like PTSD from, which is funny because I never served in Glasgow zone. I hear all the like horror stories of Glasgow. I don't have anything like that in Dundee. It was just a tough area. So I got transferred in with Elder Talbot, and that was awesome because he lived like 10 minutes from my house, and I didn't even know that when he was out in the mission. Stead also was a redneck, which was phenomenal. If you ever get him on, he has a great Alabama or Tim McGraw singing voice. There'd be a few nights that he would, sing me to sleep of some good classic, 90s Tim McGraw songs. I'd really, really like a musical number. I don't think you've had a musical number on the podcast yet, have you?
No, that's not what this is for.
And I was going to volunteer set that he could do maybe 18 Wheeler by Alabama or digress. But yeah, so Elder Talbot had a crazy story. So just a few weeks prior to when I moved in, they taught and baptized a male. He'd been confirmed. They advanced into the office of the Aaronic priest, and then I think he died of a heart attack. I remember Stetson talking about, like, they all felt the sense of urgency to ordain this guy to the office of an elder, like, as fast as they could. And he didn't make it that far, but I just remember Stetson saying that they were really glad that, like, there was that spirit of urgency. And I don't know, right? You look back however many years ago it's been, and it's easy to like second guess things, right? Like, it was fast paced, people got baptized, and yeah, there's some that maybe should have had some more time. But then I think there's instances like that like, good thing there was a sense of urgency, and that man was able to receive those blessings while he was still on his mortal journey. And I just remember that kind of left a lasting impression that it's important to do things with a sense of urgency, and so that I like that. Scumdee though it still didn't treat me well. So one day we're in our flat and we start looking and we notice that like things are missing. So I say things like, all of a sudden, like, Elder Talbot's luggage is gone. And like, I'd been buying a soccer jersey from each of the areas I'd served in. Like, I opened up the closet and like all of my soccer jerseys are gone. And another elder had been on exchange. He left his digital camera. His digital camera was gone. We're like, what in the world? So all we can think is when we'd go exercise and then we'd go run in the morning, someone must have like kicked in our door, but they didn't like ransack the place. They like strategically took things. So yeah, Stetson lost all of his luggage. Poor Elder Step lost his digital camera. I don't think he had anything backed up. So we called the cops to report it, and they more or less like separated Stetson and I. And they're like, hey, the only person that would do this is someone who's living here. Like, you need to go confront the person you're living with and like find out where they put your stuff. Like, they didn't even believe us. They just like wanted us to go blame the other person, which was weird. And this was funny. Elder Talbot, he was furious. He was like, all right, we're gonna study how to dust off our feet, and like we're dusting off our feet of whoever it was that came and robbed us. And I was like, well, Stetson, like, what if it was like a single mother that was starving and like she had to come steal this to go feed her kid? And Instead of like, oh yeah, I'm sure that's who it was. A poor single mom that doesn't have money, so she comes and robs people's apartments at 6 a.m. Um, he was just funny. He was furious. We did not dust our feet. We we didn't need to do that. But John Geltley was in the ward, and I think a few guys have talked about him. But he had his blessings restored just previously before this. Fantastic. He'd been back to the temple. He was just solid. He was on fire. He had a couple kids though that lived kind of a rough lifestyle. So when he found out we'd been robbed, he told their kids what had happened, and they were able to find out who it was that had taken all of our stuff. But it had already been sold at that point. So that was kind of a bummer. I was hoping that we could recover it. But yeah, he knew. He's like, yeah, they kicked in your door when you'd go running, and like they'd been in our flat like multiple times apparently. And that was a weird feeling.
Wow.
Yeah. Did either of you others, were you in Dundee Bingham at all?
Nope, I didn't serve in Dundee.
So it was a pretty rough street that flat was on. Just not the best location. Another one of those that like probably somebody should have called the office and been like, hey, can we maybe move to a nicer area? But we didn't. So one night we had the Kirkcaldy elders, the Perth elders. I think even the Cooper elders were all in our flat because we had an early zone conference. Actually, it may have even been when Elder Holland came. I can't remember for sure. But anyway, so it's the middle of the night and we hear this like glass pane just shatter. And so the flat beneath us, and you'd always kind of got the vibe they were like selling drugs or doing something illegal. There was always like dodgy people standing outside. So we hear this shatter and like look down and someone's like jumping out the shattered window, chasing after somebody else. And we didn't think much of it, but then someone chaps on our door, like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes later, and it was the police. So I remember I opened up the door and I thought they would just stay there, but the police like stepped into a room and they like shined their flashlight over to the living room. So we had like all 10 of our elders had like drug all of our mattresses into the same room, and we're sleeping there. And I just remember the look on this lady's face, like, what is going on in here? And yeah, that was
sleepover.
Yeah.
Oh man.
We promise. Yeah, so that was awkward. She was like, we need to interview all of you. And one of the others was like, well, he's like, well, we're just in our underwear. Like, can you give us time to get dressed? I'm like, she wouldn't even do that. So like, there's 10 of us in there. Like we're all sleeping in the same thing. Like I can just imagine how like that cop left just thinking like, what in the world did we just like knock into? And it was the same officers that came and took the report that something had been stolen out of our apartment. So then like, she thought we were even more crazy, but
oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was bizarre. So John Geltley, same guy, he found out that this had happened. So I guess he called the mission home the next day and said like if they didn't transfer us flats, he was going to come like make us live with him. And we ended up getting a new apartment after that in like Brodie Ferry or something, which was a much nicer area than where we had been. It's good there were a lot of funny stories in Dundee because there weren't a lot of great teaching stories. I remember Elder Mulford and Elder Clark Peterson. He's another one that you need to make sure you get on. I think they were assistants at the time. They were coming over for splits, and we didn't have any food at that time. I think all we had was like a jar of curry sauce and some basmati rice or something. So I think we'd been in Cooper or something. We were driving back, and a pheasant flew into the side panel of the car, but it killed it. And so we pulled over, and like I was like, "Hey, it's really not that bad. Like, we didn't hit it with the grill. Like, it more died on impact. Like, it's not." It's not that gory. So like, we'll just take it home and eat it. So we threw it in the trunk of the car, took it home, and the assistants met us there. So we brought this pheasant up, and we cleaned it out, and we made pheasant curry out of it. And I just remember how disgusted Elder Peterson was. So he's from like Danville, California, pretty nice area. I don't think he'd been exposed to anything like that. We're like gutting it in our kitchen, like in the kitchen, feathers were flying everywhere. I don't know if he actually ate any of it or not, but like it was phenomenal. There was no professional chef work involved, but Moses got his manna. We got our pheasant.
There was professional hunters involved, that's for sure.
Yeah, there was some strategy in that one. Um,
That's awesome.
and I've got a picture of that too, so I'll try and wrap this up so we can fly through a couple pictures. Elder Talbot, another funny thing we would do is we would kind of make up stories about each other to our members or our investigators. We were teaching a lady named Donna, and she was like a concert violinist. That's one of those she said she was, but she had like some pretty strong chains of addiction, and so you weren't quite sure if you were getting the full story or not. And we could never get her to come to church. We taught her for like 4 or 5 weeks, and she'd always commit to come, and then never come. So the one time I told her, I was like, well, if like, that Elder Talbot's a concert pianist, right? And she was like, oh, no. And I was like, well, if you come to church, like you and Elder Talbot could do a musical number, like in front of the whole church. Like you ring your violin, Elder Talbot will ring his piano. And Elder Talbot was just furious. Like, I kind of kept cutting him off and like exaggerating the story. Where I was like, yeah, he went to the school of Juilliard. Like he's a very well-trained, like classical pianist. Like you really need to come so you can hear him play. Like he plays every Sunday. Like he's the organist. She never did come to church, but yeah, he was. Yeah,
I was hoping that she did, and what happened as a result, that would have been more entertaining.
Yeah, I don't know what we would have done. It would have been bad. It's probably a tender mercy she didn't come because, in hindsight, probably not the smartest thing to do as a missionary. But we just wanted her to come to church. That's all. I think it was. So it was probably, I think it was this time when so the Griffiths were here. I think they came in July of 2009. So they were here, and this was, when the transition was happening from the Fredericks to the Griffiths. And it was just different, right? Like everything we've been taught. It was a 180-degree shift. And I feel bad that, Stetson and I should have been more, we should have been more open and embraced, what we were being taught more. We didn't do the best job of that. I remember we were driving to, I think it was the first Zone Leader Council, and somehow we got a copy of like the Training to the Mission Presidents that had just been done. I don't know who got us that album, so we listened to, all the apostles were training the mission presidents on what they wanted them to focus on, and I remember it was talking like, when you have your missionaries together, don't teach from like Disney, don't teach from like storybooks, or don't give fables. Like you teach from the scriptures, right? Like your time is limited with them. You teach from the scriptures. And so we show up to Zone Leader Council, and like that was the first thing Sister Griffiths did. She was like, well, we're going to read, and I forget what book it even was, but like it wasn't from the scriptures. I was set to just as each other, like, oh my gosh. And I feel bad. We were prideful and wrong with our mindset on that. And then I think she read section like 121 from the Doctrine and Covenants, and she said something along the lines of like, we're just going to go ahead and like change the words in the scriptures right here. And Stetson and I were just like, who is this lady? Like she's going to come in and teach us from storybooks with pictures and like change wordings from Doctrine and Covenants. Like I think that was the same thing when President Griffiths was like, if an elder doesn't want to put product in his hair, like he doesn't have to. Like it's not your job to go tell him that, hey, you need to put product in your hair. Like he's an agent unto himself. He can choose. So I feel bad on that. And I talked to both President and Sister Griffiths at the last mission reunion, and they were very kind and loving. But I think I owed them an apology for maybe the way that we didn't follow their counsel. It was funny. We were so big on following the brethren, right? Like we wanted exact obedience and model ourselves after the brethren. Like President and Sister Griffiths, like they were the brethren, right? Like at the time, they were the brethren. And then it's funny too, you see how much when President Nelson, some of the directives he's taken and the way he's changed things, like no one once said, well, that's not the way that President Monson did it. So I feel bad on that. One other funny story with Elder Talbot, there was a single sister. Her name was Maureen Smith. She lived in Dundee, Bingham. She became a temple worker. So I forget the whole story. Whoever reactivated her found her needs to come on, but she'd been like a recluse. She lived in her apartment and hadn't left for like years. She had some sort of a phobia. Hadn't left her apartment at all. And missionaries found her. They either baptized her or reactivated her. Like she ended up working in the temple, like holding calling. She'd come on all these joint teachers with the missionaries. Like she was just phenomenal. And so Stetson and I think we had a lunch appointment at her house one day, and one of the other missionaries in the zone saw that our car was there. So they they called President Griffiths, and they were like, "Hey, Elder Talbot and Elder Allen are meeting with a single sister without another set of missionaries present." And so President Griffiths called us and nicely was like, "Hey, like you're not obedient at all. Like you can't be in a single sister's home. You don't have somebody else with you. Like you can't have a 2-to-1 ratio with a female." And same things that we hung up in Stetson's like, "Oh, call out Elder right now. We're gonna go hammer him." And we did it, but it was just a good reminder that we always need to be obedient, not just when it's convenient to us. So there were some good humbling moments from President Griffiths. It was just a different transition. I did well. Well, I shouldn't say I did well. Hammer time was right for me. It helped me be a better missionary. I feel bad because I think maybe I didn't help others. I forget who it was. I think it was just maybe Elder Payne that said, when there's a high level of expectation and not a high level of love, that's not the best recipe. And then I know there was some of that. Yeah, I think we all have the best intentions, and we just wanted to be our best. And I think sometimes maybe that got carried away. But anyways, so I died in Dundee. I love that ward. That was probably the longest area I served in. Then between my 2 stints there was in Dundee, Bingham. A lot of great memories there. It was just a tough area to teach. The very last day in that area, we found a lady named Mitchell Sinclair, and it was the day before I left. I went home, and Elder Talbot ended up seeing her get baptized that next move. So that was cool. That was like the only even stretch of hint of success as far as teaching someone to make and keep commitments in Dundee, Bingham. So that was cool. I know time's short, so I'll fly through kind of some of these last 4 bullet points. So everyone's talked about some of the general authorities that we got to have come to the mission. Elder Neil Anderson, he wasn't an apostle at the time. He came right before he got put in as a quorum of the 12. I just remember how intense he was. Like, he'd just come back from Brazil. He's like, "I don't care what your mission goal is. I don't care that it's doubled. Like, I was just in South America and they baptized, 10,000 people or whatever the number was." And he was like, "That's cute. You had a couple hundred baptisms." Like, be less prideful. He was intense. Elder Holland, that was phenomenal. What stuck out to me is when he shook all of our hands, and then he just said, "Hey, President, I've just done my interviews." When I shook your hands, like that was pretty cool. Elder Bednar was amazing. He talked a lot on that concept of 1 by 1, which at the time that was the first I'd really heard or focused on that. It seems like in the last decade or so we've heard that a lot more, but he said something along the lines of the phrase 1 by 1 appears 6 times in the Book of Mormon. If you'll study those 6 instances, your understanding of the atonement will grow more than it ever could otherwise, or something like that. So that was cool. I remember actively studying those phrases and when those occur. So that was pretty cool. And then Elder Malm, he was, the one that really said "Hey, hammer time needs to come to an end." And I just remember how much he talked about how the mission hasn't seen miracles yet, and the miracles were so close to being unleashed. And leading with love would be the way to unleash all those miracles. So that was cool. I've got my hour and 36 minutes, so I'm gonna stop. I don't want to be that guy that goes for 2.5 hours.
You will not beat our record, I promise.
Good. I don't want to.
You beat your 20-minute prediction though by a fair bit.
I was nervous. I was scared.
No, you did great. One thing we ask people that come on is any memories that you have in specific of the Fredericks and obviously the Griffiths in your case as well.
Yeah. So a couple things. One thing I loved about President Frederick was he was all about short, powerful statements of truths. He'd just say 1 or 2 sentences and they would just ring. So I just took a couple out of my study journal. When members were always saying, "Hey, we were only worried about numbers." I remember President Frederick in a ward council once, he had everybody pull out their temple recommend number, and he said, "Look at the barcode and tell me what's underneath it." And it's a number. And he said, we're all numbers. It's not about the numbers, but we're even a number on our temple recommend. I thought that was gutsy. I don't think I would have done that.
Goodness.
I can't remember the context of this, but it was during my first interview with President, and he asked me why I'd come on my mission. and I thought I'd given a good answer because I felt like I was there for the right reasons, but maybe not. He said, it's okay to come on your mission for the wrong reason. It's not okay to stay out for the wrong reason. And I thought that was cool. You can't ask the Lord to help you convert someone past your own conversion level. It was all about that Bunsen burner flame, right? Like if your flame's not that hot as blue, you can't expect to convert somebody past that. Another funny one, when I was with Elder Crock at training, and we had our interviews, and President said, he just asked, like, how's the area going? How's your teaching pool? And I kind of said, like, oh, we're teaching a lot of people, we're working hard, we're being obedient. Like, we haven't quite seen the blessings yet, but we're really working hard and trying to do our best. And his response was that if you're doing your best and working your hardest, your teaching pool should reflect that. Like, that hit like a ton of bricks, right? Like,
ouch, yeah.
Yeah, and that's just how President was. Like, I don't think he ever meant anything to be rude. He was just direct, and I appreciated that. Have you had them on yet? I know they're coming up soon. Have you already met with them?
As we're sitting here, we're talking to them this week on Thursday.
Awesome. So make sure you get their conversion story, and then when they went to the temple to get sealed, and start getting their mission call. I won't touch on any of those. I remember being his own leader. So a lot of times your interviews with him, he'd put both of his hands on your shoulder and kind of pull you into a room and just stare in your eyes and say, are you worthy? And that would be the extent of your interviews. He could see into your soul with that. Would say you can't expect those in your district or zone to outperform what you were producing, like that. When you're on the Lord's errand, you're entitled to the Lord's help. That was kind of what he shared at the last mission reunion. Talked about how we always think of that as missionaries, right? But it applies as husbands, as dads, whatever role we may be in. If you're still on the Lord's errand, you're entitled to his help. He would always compare the upper room of the mission home to the upper room of the Newell K. Whitney store, which was cool. He talked about some of the School of the Prophets and some of the amazing, revelatory experiences that happened there. And he'd just kind of pose a question like, do you expect the same miracles to happen in the upper room of the mission home as what happened there? That was cool. More testimonies are built on your feet than on your knees. I like that. He was a big fan of you go earn your testimony. You don't sit idly by and expect it to come to you. And then last, I remember this was in my departing interview. He said, up until now, this should be one of the most defining moments of your life, but there will be events more transcendent than this. And he just meant to be like, hey, like up till now, this is the best thing that's happened, but like, going forward, it's not going to be. You've got bigger goals for you. So that was cool. President Grills, I was just impressed with how well he could go do hard things. Like he had to do hard things, right? Like kind of overturn hammer time, combine those two missions, ramp down the number of missionaries, find a way to unify like two entirely different cultures. And he just did it. Like, he wasn't scared. He wasn't intimidated by, a bunch of prideful zone leaders and assistants in a meeting that maybe didn't see eye to eye with what he was trying to do. He just lovingly knew what he was supposed to do, and he consistently did it. But that's always stuck out to me.
It's amazing. I love that. Great quotes from President Frederick. And I had my last 6 months of my mission when he was brand new. And so kind of similar to you with the Griffiths. And some of those were quotes that he would share a lot. Like I can remember those. Just you bringing that memory back to me. That was really, really special. So, well, Drew, like we talked about, you definitely went over 20 minutes. You've shared some awesome experiences. You had a great list of companions and people that we'd love to have on the podcast in the future. Is there any of them in specific, including companions, that you'd like to call out? And before I let you have at it, Sean did postpone, but we haven't rescheduled. So as we were talking, I sent him a message, and we'll see what we can do to get him back on the schedule.
Yeah. I think we. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm negotiating with Andy Harper right now too on when to get him on, so should be fairly soon.
That's right.
Perfect. I think Sean Waite, Clark Peterson, the Manwarings, Ryan Blake, he'd be another good one.
Yeah.
And then some of the sisters too. So I don't know if we've heard from any sisters during when I served. So Sister Knowles, that's Naulls, and she's got married. I may have to send you. I don't remember what their maiden names are. Sister Ott would be good to hear from. Sister Williams. I'll send you a follow up. I think I'm friends with them on Facebook. But.
Yeah, I mean, more than anything, we appreciate referrals. So, anybody that you can think of that you'd like to be on here, know that we will share this on the S.E.M. Facebook page. But by all means, you're more than welcome to share it on your own page, and just tag all your friends and do whatever you need to get it in front of people. It's been pretty amazing as we've connected with more and more people to hear how many people are listening and how this is impacting them. So don't hesitate to share it, Drew. That's all we have to say.
Cool. No, thanks, guys. It's awesome. Love what you're doing. I look forward to the Fredericks and others. But really looking forward to hear that. Are they going to be number 100? Have you passed episode 100 yet?
They will be number 100. Yes.
Oh, phenomenal.
But anyway, we just want to say thank you for taking time. We know that you have there's value to your time, and we're grateful that you spent almost 2 hours with us tonight sharing your experience. And more than anything, you're impacting other people's lives who are listening to you, and they will be inspired by the words that you shared tonight. So, and we just want to express to you our love. We're so grateful that you're our brother in Scotland. So if there's ever anything we can do to be of assistance to you, we're here for you. I mean, that's just that we're in this beautiful brotherhood and sisterhood of amazing missionaries who served in that wonderful land. So please let us know if we can ever be of help to you, and we appreciate it.
Well, thanks, elders. Appreciate you.
All right, Drew. Well, have a good night. Cheerio, brother.
Cheerio.